Have you ever built a web app that feels just blazing fast on your own machine, but then you ship it and users are telling you it's kind of slow? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, the secret to fixing that often isn't about rewriting your logic, but simply changing how you tell the browser to load your assets. So today, we're going to break down the 4 key commands that give you total control over your app's loading performance.
It's a classic story, right? Your app is an absolute rocket ship on your fancy developer laptop with a super fast internet connection. But for a real user, maybe on a shaky mobile network, it feels like it's crawling through mud. And more often than not, the real culprit isn't your code itself, but a less than optimal loading strategy.
So how do we even measure what fast is? It's not just about one single number. It's about what the user feels. And that's where these key metrics come into play. You've got first contentful paint. That's that initial sigh of relief when something finally appears on the blank screen. Then there's largest contentful paint, which is when the main content, the whole reason they came to your site, is finally visible. And maybe most important, time to interact. That's the magic moment they can actually start clicking buttons and using your app. The big takeaway here, these aren't just abstract terms. They are real, concrete targets we can aim for to make our users way happier.
To actually hit those performance targets, you have 4 incredibly powerful tools in your toolkit: preload, prefetch, async, and defer. And the best way to think about them isn't as these complicated code attributes, but as simple, direct commands you can give the browser to orchestrate the perfect loading experience.
Let's start with the first 2, preload and prefetch. I like to call these the hinting commands, because that's exactly what they do. They're all about giving the browser a little heads up about resources it's going to need, either right this second or maybe in the near future.
First up, we've got preload. This is your high-priority, drop everything and get this now command. You're essentially telling the browser that a specific resource is absolutely essential for that first paint.
Think of it like you're a director on a movie set yelling, "I need that prop on stage, right now." This is what you're going to use for that big hero image, the critical CSS file, or those custom web fonts that are essential for rendering everything above the fold without any of that annoying flicker or layout shift.
Okay, now let's look at its sibling, prefetch. This one is the total opposite when it comes to priority. It's a low priority, hey, do this when you have a spare moment kind of request. It all happens quietly in the background.
Prefetch is kind of like telling an assistant, hey, when you have a free second, could you go ahead and grab the files for my next meeting? The browser finishes all its important high-priority work, and then in its downtime, it starts grabbing resources for pages the user might navigate to next. And let me tell you, this is the secret sauce for making transitions in single-page applications feel absolutely instantaneous.
All right, let's move on to the second pair of commands. These are all about controlling how and when your JavaScript actually runs: async and defer. This is a classic point of confusion for so many of us, but it's actually pretty simple when you see them side by side. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Both async and defer are awesome because they let the browser download scripts in the background without blocking the main HTML from being parsed. But the huge difference, the one that trips everybody up, is when they execute. Async scripts are like sprinters. They just run the very moment they finish downloading in whatever order that happens to be. Defer scripts, on the other hand, are more like a relay team. They all wait for the entire HTML document to be parsed and ready, and then they execute, one after another, in the exact order you listed them in your code.
So, when do you actually use them? Well, it's pretty clear-cut. Use async for those standalone, third-party scripts that don't really depend on anything else. Think analytics, ads, that sort of thing. But for your main application bundle, your big React or Vue app that absolutely needs the DOM to be ready before it can do anything, defer is almost always the right choice. It guarantees the execution order and prevents a ton of potential errors.
So, we've looked at the 4 individual commands, but now for the most important part: how do we combine them into a single master plan for maximum performance? This right here is where the magic really happens. And here it is, our 4-step master plan. It's actually really simple. First, you're going to preload your critical above-the-fold assets. Second, defer your main JavaScript bundles. Third, prefetch the resources for where the user might go next. And finally, number 4, use async for any of those non-essential third-party scripts. If you just follow these 4 steps, you've pretty much covered all your bases for a seriously high-performance app.
Let's just zoom in on that critical path for a second. These are the resources that are absolutely essential for that initial page load. Anything the user needs to see and interact with right away gets top priority.
This means preloading the visual stuff, like your main image and fonts, for maximum speed, and then deferring your app's JavaScript so it doesn't get in the way of that super important initial render.
And what about everything else? Well, that's just as simple. Resources for pages the user is likely to visit next, those get prefetched in the background. And all those third-party scripts for analytics or social media widgets, they get the async attribute so they can just load on their own time without interfering with your core application.
Okay, so this theory is all well and good, but how do we actually put it into practice with the frameworks we use every single day, like React, Vue, and Angular? Well, the great news is these frameworks have incredibly powerful built-in tools that make this stuff surprisingly easy to implement. Let's take a look.
If you're using Next.js with React, you are in for a treat. Preloading your most important image is as simple as adding a single priority prop to their image component. Prefetching future pages, the link component just does it for you automatically, no extra work. And for third-party scripts, the script component has a built-in lazy onload strategy. Seriously, it's almost all handled for you.
And hey, Vue and Angular developers have some great tools too. In Vue, you can use what's called a magic comment right inside your dynamic import to tell Webpack to prefetch a route. The Angular CLI is even more automated. It already defers your scripts and prefetches lazy loaded routes right out of the box. And just like Next.js, Angular now has an image directive where you just add priority and it will handle preloading your LCP image.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? When you strategically combine preload for your critical assets, defer for your main JavaScript, prefetch for future interactions, and async for everything else, you're not just tweaking a few settings, you're basically conducting an orchestra of resources to create a perfect loading sequence. And the result isn't just a better Lighthouse score. It's a front end that feels genuinely instant, smooth, and just a joy for your users to interact with. By mastering these 4 simple commands, you've pretty much unlocked one of the most effective ways to boost your web performance. The strategy is clear, the tools are already built right into your favorite frameworks. So, the only question left is, what are you going to optimize first?